Hey guys, this is the live takeover by me, Trevor Shannahan of Waterfowl is Life. Today we're doing a basics of duck calling and a question and answer session afterwards. So I'm just probably going to go over maybe 5-10 minutes of information on basic duck calling sounds and how to make them and everything, and then if you guys have any questions, about calling, whatever, go ahead and we'll do, maybe 20-30 minutes of that. First thing I'm going to go over, the most basic thing of duck calling is the simple quack, and it's just, and it's just through the back of the call. It's wit, 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 wit. And you want to try and keep your tongue anchored so that you don't put as much spit into the call. So it's just you hold it in here between your thumb and your forefinger, and just as you're making the quack, you go ahead and open the hand. So it's, and that just makes it more of a quack instead of a whack. So the next thing to do would be the next thing to go over would be your cadences, and basically that's just stringing the series of quacks together. Just and you hear how I put some different cadences and everything together. It's just wit, 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 wit. And to get the deeper, it's wah, wah, wah. You open your throat, slow the air down a little bit more, and that's how you get that deep one. And you could just play around with doing different cadences. You can do a slow one, and you can do an excited one. You can do a drug out pleading one. And all that is just how much air you're putting into it, how long you're allowing the air to be into it before you're cutting it off, and then mouth cavity size and how much you keep your throat constricted. The bigger mouth cavity size, the less you constrict your throat, the deeper the sound's going to be. That's how you get that big boss hen. If you want a young hen, you tighten your whole mouth up. It's almost like puckering your cheeks in, and then you constrict your throat. So it's not more air, but it's faster air. Pitch comes from how much of the reed's vibrating, and how much of the reed's vibrating is dictated by the velocity of the air, not how much air you're actually putting in there. So to get the low one, and that's just changing up how tight your throat is and your mouth cavity size. You want to bring air from your diaphragm. You don't want to grunt or growl into the call. It's almost like a hum. It's just, but you are bringing it from up here. What you really want to do is you want to be able to have a mirror, and instead of blowing on it, going, you want to basically fog it up. You would go, and that'll teach you not to constrict your throat, and that'll get you a duckier tone. If you're going versus it's, and you can see if you open your throat up and bring hot air from down your diaphragm, that actually produces a duckier sound. Next thing we're going to go over would be the feed call. There's really two different types of feed call. There's a cutting feed call, which is actually like a true feed call. It's what ducks do when they're feeding. And then you have a rolling feed call, which is what ducks do when they're in the air. And so the cutting, the simplest way I teach it is just to go tick, 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 tuk, tuk, tuk. It's just, or you can go dig, 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 dug, 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 dug. And that gives you a high and a low. And it's just, and you can accentuate it by opening your hand on the high one and closing it on the low one. So that's, that right there is your cutting feed, and just to build speed with it, you just practice it. Just start out and just, all right. So the next feed that I mentioned was the rolling feed, and that's basically just ticka ticka ticka, tuka tuka tuka, digga digga digga, duga duga duga, whatever you want to use. And it's basically just going, yeah, it's just bouncing, it's rolling, it's just ticka 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 ticka, and it's just, and that's a slow one. That's, you want to build speed. You don't want to try and get into. I mean, it takes a lot of practice to build into that. So just start out slow, just. And really, I mean, out in the field, there's not a ton of use for that. There's more use for the cutting style, just like. But, you can mix it in and. Just to sound like maybe some ducks flying over. But really, when I'm out hunting, the cut and feed is about the only feed that I would actually do. Adam, I am using a brand called Power Calls. We're launching in late September, mid to late September. So be on the lookout for these calls. I'm just running a bunch of prototypes right now. Okay, so the bouncing hen, Dusty. Basically, the bouncing hen is you're taking your regular quack and you're mixing it with what I was describing as the cutting feed, but just one note. It's just. So it's just. That's just putting it, just the quack and the tick, and then you want to put a quack right after the tick. So it's. Practice it slow. Practice it slow, but the cadence of it is actually supposed to be like this. And it's basically just a hen going and just bouncing in between the notes. So really, I mean, as we went over the quacks, different sequences when you're out hunting. Honestly, to break ducks, you're gonna force some more air into the call. I don't like dragging notes out. I like still trying to sound like a duck, trying to go. And I'll drag the sequence out, but I don't drag the notes out like. I tend to do that. Not saying that it doesn't work. I mean, I tend not to do that. Not saying it doesn't work, but I tend to try and just try and sound a little more like a duck. Oh, Travis, that fast cadence, just that little. You're really kind of, you're almost pinching air. You're really doing a high hen, so it's basically that same hen, but it's just sped up. It's just, and it's almost, instead of going wit, it's just going it. And so you don't have as much on the. That's basically right there, but sped up and put together. Um, Guys, I mean, if you've been coming in, I went over the feed call um, at the beginning of it. Um, if there's anything other than just the basic cutting feed or the rolling feed that you want me to go over, that's fine. Go ahead and ask any questions with that. But at the beginning of the video, I actually did go over it. Best approach to the hail call. Like I was saying before, I mean, typically your traditional hail call, even if it's not a ringing style hail call like in contest, this is what a contest hail is. I wouldn't use that out in the field. Then the traditional style hunting hail has always been. Once again, I like to try and keep it a little duckier without dragging those notes out, and just hit the same power on top but shorten the notes out and try and sound a little more like a duck. Um, Will, about the goose calling, we discussed it, and we were just going to see how this video did, and if it did all right, we were planning on doing a goose calling one in maybe a couple weeks. But I mean, any questions about hunting scenarios? Call styles, calling styles. Any other questions? I'll take whatever. But Heath, no. When I got birds right above me, never making a sound. Keeping my head down, never making a sound. Jesse, best duck call to recommend to a novice caller is, honestly, if you don't intend to put a bunch of practice in, I would recommend a double reed. They're easier to get a duck sound out of for the average guy who's not going to practice a lot. If you want to try and advance your calling, I always recommend people to find a good quality single reed. There's a lot of them on the market. Obviously, I prefer Power Calls. It's the company that I'm involved with, but there's a lot of good single reeds on the market that'll do everything that you need. And honestly, if you learn to run a single reed, you're going to learn to run a call the right way, and there's never going to be any learning curve. Once you learn how to run a single reed, you can go back and forth between a double reed and a single reed very easily. Blake Little, this is a single reed. Pretty much all I use is single reeds. Heath, I let them get out about 50, 60 yards. I don't call when they're right above me. I let them get out maybe 50, 60 yards, and I just kind of, if I've already broke them and they're circling, let them get out 50, 60, 70 yards, just hit them with. Joseph, do I mix quacks in with my feed and chuckle? Yeah, I mean, honestly, we call them drag quacks, and I go whack whack. Jim, good point. You know, a lot of actually being able to work birds on a consistent basis doesn't have to do with how good you sound on a duck call. It's really about reading the birds, and like I was going over with Heath, I'm more of along the lines of a less is more type caller. I'll break the ducks, but once I get them circling, I kind of just read them when I let them get out 60 yards. I hit them with that ah 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 ah. Generally, they snap right to it, and I let them come in, come in, come in. If they're setting up the light but they're gonna light a little bit outside, or they're gonna veer off. I'll send them up with a little. But the biggest thing is just reading what the birds want to hear that day, whether they want to be hammered from start to finish, whether you got to break them and then lay off, or whether they really don't want to hear any calling at all. And that really just takes time and experience out in the field. And some people pick it up, some people can hunt 50 years and never pick it up. It kind of just depends on the person, but you know not necessarily how you do it, but doing it at the right time is always going to be more effective. I'll shut the basement down.
Sure.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. You mean go ahead and get this one, that way you don't have to get it?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Chance, I mean, pretty much I run a 10,000ths read in every call, every duck call, except for a cut down. But I don't use a cut down hunting, so it's kind of irrelevant. Yeah, Jesse, actually, the truck is actually a really good place to practice. That's kind of where I learned how to blow a duck and goose call, was going back and forth. I had a 30-minute ride to school, so I basically just blew a call the entire way there and the entire way home. And it's all about putting time in. I mean, you want to make sure you're practicing the right way, because if you're practicing bad habits, it's just going to make them even harder to break in the future. But you have to put practice in. Boone. Transitioning from feed to bounce. That's a tough one. Honestly, it's just something that you need to practice. And honestly, if you have a cut and feed like mine, where it's a lot easier, because you almost have the cadence of a hen. Where it's if you're doing a roll, it's a little bit harder, because it just stands out, and you pretty much primarily have to completely change how you're putting air into a call. Where if you're putting air into it like I am, you're doing the same thing as you would be on the bouncing hen. Andrew Underwood. Man, CDs for duck calling. Honestly, I've watched a lot of instructionals and never really. I don't know. It's just duck calling's a hard one to teach, because there's so limited a range of what a mallard actually does, versus like a Canada goose, where I would say absolutely bad grammar, hands down, that's the one to go get. Um, Honestly, I mean, the R&T Right stuff is a decent CD. Honestly, you can go pull a lot of videos off of YouTube, and I have some. Ducklander's got some. There's a lot of good videos out there on YouTube, and you can pull the ones you like, and I'm pretty sure you can just put them YouTube to MP3, and they'll create a sound file, and you can burn a CD to throw in the truck when whenever you're driving around, just to listen and to practice with. Alex Hendricks. I mean, I don't really add in any Drake whistles, primarily because I'm generally the only one calling, and it's not as effective as a hen call for me. But if you have someone that's not as good on a duck call, or but wants to be involved in the hunt, you get them to do a Drake whistle. Generally I like doing it when I'm doing some feeding. If I have someone else doing it for me, I like doing it when I'm in a little feed. That's a good place to do it because they can hear it. Generally they're closer when you're doing some feed, so that's a good place to have someone do it. So, any other questions? Call related stuff. Calling, we can go over advanced stuff if you want. But trying to think of anything on my own while I'm waiting for some more questions to come in. How many times have people told me to cut my hair yet? Actually, this is pretty short for me. I just got it cut like a month ago, so not yet. I'm sure in about 6 months they will, because that's about how often I cut it. Aaron, I went over it earlier. I'll go over it again just because we're lacking on some questions right now. The best way to learn a chuckle is just very simple. It's just tick, 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 tuk, 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 or if it's more comfortable for you, dig, 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 dug, dug, dug. And it's just... And that's really the simplest one. It's just... I prefer ending the notes with a K sound because it gives it a crisper sound. So it's... Teddy, we went over to the bouncing hen. Seth, no, I do not lift, bro. Brooke, I already went over to different sounding quacks. I mean, I'll go over to the bouncing hen again. It's basically quack tick. It's just, it's, your regular quack, and then what I was, the tick for the feed. And then work on speeding it up. Yes, Nathan. On some of those I do. Paul, the refuge feed, it's basically, to me, it's just that cut and feed with bouncing hens mixed in. So it's... And it's just basically finding spots where the cadence of your cut will blend with a bouncing hen. And it's all about practice. It's just about speeding that cut up and getting those bouncing hens to blend in pretty good. Wood duck. I don't have a wood duck call down here. It's sitting up in my office. But Austin, honestly, when I'm finishing ducks, I mean, every day's different, and to Jim's point, you really got to read the ducks. Jim's point, and he's completely right in bringing it up. It's more important to read the ducks than to sound good to anybody's ears. Most days I'll finish ducks without blowing a call. If they're starting to veer off, I'll center them up. Just with a little salt, just real soft and easy, just to center them up back. Get them lined up for the shot. But some days the ducks need to be hammered all the way in. It's more about reading them. I tend to and have pretty good success a majority of my time with really not even calling the last 20-30 yards before they land. Andrew, I do not use the Cajun squeal in the field. Never felt that it was necessary or that it would bag me more ducks by doing it or by not doing it. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Raymond, my favorite call to grab their attention on a flyover is just basically what I went over earlier. It's not like a traditional hail call, but it's just a loud, aggressive duck, and it's like and I'll just break ducks like that. Once they get in tighter, I don't hit them as hard. I'll hit them with, some lower, more aggressive, deeper ducks. Well, calling with multiple people in the blind, honestly, I'm generally the only person calling in the blind, so it's tough for me to really talk on that. You don't want to be making a bunch of noise. Generally, if you have one person feeding and one person doing the hens, you just keep each other doing what they're strongest at. Nathan, I don't hunt much timber, so oh well, you're saying field hunter over water. Honestly, the only water hunting that I really do, it's not big open water, it's flooded fields, but I also hunt dry fields. To me, the birds work a lot better in dry fields than they do in flooded fields. But outside of that, I mean, most of mine's field hunting, so I can't really talk too much about hunting, big water or even the timber. Anthony, I prefer a single reed. That's pretty much all I use. Favorite beginner call, I mean, it just depends on really how far you want to take it. If you want to advance further, I suggest starting on a good single reed. If you're not too worried about it, you just want to learn the basics, get you a good quality double reed. I mean, there's a lot of good single reeds and double reeds out on the market. So it really just depends on how far you want to take your calling on what you should start with. But if you definitely want to advance it to at least a semi-advanced level, I would recommend starting on a single reed. Zach, gotta know who the judges are. Once I know who the judges are, I can give you my prediction. All right, so I mean, any other questions, or I'll if we start running out of questions, I'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. Not taking too much of your time, but Ryan, I was good at blackjack for about 4 hours and then sucked at it for about an hour. All right, guys. Well, I guess that's gonna wrap it up. This will be available on the Waterfowl's Life page. Andrew, no, I will not be to Game Fair. Riley, what kind of hail call? Like a Main Street or just a hunting style? Josh, no, I don't like gambling. I do it like once a year. It's a good for shy or overcalled ducks talking in hunted areas. Honestly, Derek, the times I've hunted public land, being aggressive to break them, and then just kind of hitting them on the corners has always worked for me. All right, so Riley, I mean, basically, my version of a hunting style hail is a little shorter than the traditional, the traditional one. So my version of hunting hail is. And that's my version. Mike, I mean, basically, the feed that I was teaching, the cutting feed that I was teaching at the beginning, it's not my feed, but it's the one that I teach, is basically without, bringing the air, from your throat. I mean, you still have to bring it from your throat a little bit, but you're cutting the notes off with your tongue, and it's just. Shelby, this is a power call prototype that I've been working on blowing in contests. I mean, my feed call it's hard to teach. I've really never really been able to teach it to anybody. I almost cough into the call, and it's just. Shelby, it's a power call prototype that I've been working on. We'll be releasing them in September. Ken. So a comeback for a Main Street is really just kind of 3 series of almost mini hails, and it's just. So the first 2, you're bringing almost halfway, 3/4 of the way down the scale, and then you bring the third one all the way down. And I'm way out of shape to be blowing a Main Street duck call. Mike, I mean, that cut that I teach is it's kind of like the middle of the tongue. It's just tick, 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 tick. You keep your teeth anchored, and you're cutting it off with the middle tongue. Tick, 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 tuk, 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 tick, 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 tuk, 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 tuk. For my regular cut, I mean, I basically cough into the call, but for that one that I try and teach people, using about the middle of your tongue just to cut those notes off. We had a little barrage of questions there. I'll give it a minute or two. If you guys have any more, questions about anything, contest call-in, hunting call-in, call selection, I've pretty much gone over. Pretty much anything. How do you do it fast? Do what fast? The feed? Chris, I've gone over a couple times earlier in the video, but basically it depends on how much you want to put into into learning the call. If you want to get at least semi-professional, proficient, you want to get a good quality single read. There's plenty in the market, and learn on that, because you're going to learn how to run a call the right way. If you don't care on how good you get, go ahead, get a nice quality double read. It's going to be easy to use, very user friendly, and it'll give you a decent ducky sound. Feed, really, I mean, you start you start slow, and it's just about putting time in and getting that muscle memory with your tongue on getting it fast, and same with the rolling feed, where it's, and it's hard for me to go slow now that I've learned how to go fast on it, but it's just ticka ticka ticka. So that's the slow, and then you gradually speed it up, and then you can get it really fast. And that, it just takes practice. It just takes time, getting your tongue to not get tongue-tied. It really, that's, hours upon hours of practice for your tongue not to get tongue-tied while you're trying to do it. And even after all those hours of practice, it still will occasionally. I mean, it happens to me all the time. Tim, we're not doing goose calling this time. Depending on how this video goes over, we may do it in a week or so. Cody, about teal hunting. Man, I mean, they make teal calls that are effective. Hit them with some teal whistles, some hen calls. I mean, yeah, you definitely can call teal. I generally tend to use a teal call if I'm primarily hunting teal, but you can still use a ham mallard call and just do but all right, I guess I'm gonna wrap this up. I've gone over pretty much every question, some multiple times. This will be available on the Waterfowler's Life page to watch back whenever you want. It probably give it 5-10 minutes. It should be back up there for you to watch the entire video. And maybe see some stuff that you missed. But I'll answer one more question before I go. Will, take the insert, put it between these two fingers, and basically you want to extend the insert out, and as you do the note, you want to quack, 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 and it'll keep it from going, and it'll be more of a quack. All right, guys. Well, I'm signing off. There's been a lot of repeat questions. If you go back and watch the video, from the beginning, I probably went over your question. So, yes, Tim, this is my call. Well, it's one that I'm working on with several others for for a company named Power Calls. We'll be releasing in mid to late October, or mid to late September, maybe in the early October. It just depends. We're not going to bring them out until everything's perfect, but it's keep an eye out for them. We're going to have a full line, single reads, double reads, goose calls, spec calls, everything. So keep on the lookout for them. Come middle of September. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I have a plane ride early tomorrow morning out to the East Coast for a calling contest, so I need to get home and get everything packed up. Take it easy. Bye.